Hello everyone, Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central, and this week I'm talking about writing dialogue, and the video is called Conversation Breakup. And the reason for that is because I'm focusing on the idea of using paragraphs when you're writing conversation or writing dialogue. A lot of students don't really know how to use paragraphs when they're writing dialogue. In most writing, students are taught that you start a new paragraph when you have a new idea or a new main idea. But when writing dialogue, you will have a new paragraph every time there's a new speaker. Or if, let's say this, if you have two speakers and they're talking back and forth, you can have many, many little paragraphs in a very short space on your page or on your computer screen, because there's a new paragraph every time that conversation switches between those characters, or any number of characters for that matter. And I'm going to give you a little example in a moment. Also, now this video is mostly about paragraphs because, again, I had a student last week who was struggling, a couple of students actually, who were struggling with writing a conversation and knowing how to break up their sentences and break up their paragraphs. But also when writing dialogue, a lot of rules are broken. And that's because dialogue or writing conversation is used mostly for fiction. And when people are talking, we don't speak in formal academic English most of the time, especially when people are talking to one another. We tend to use slang, we tend to use shortcuts, we use sentence fragments, and sometimes the meaning is between the speakers. It's not even one speaker or the other, but it can sometimes even fall between the speakers as they're sharing information and sharing that conversation. So there is quite a major difference sometimes between writing in academic English and writing dialogue. I'm focusing primarily though on where to break your paragraphs and a little bit on some of the punctuation so that you can get that right. Now let's look at an example. In the example, I'm jumping right into conversation. "Excuse me," the old man said to the young man sitting beside him. "What time is the bus supposed to arrive?" "That's your first paragraph. You can see how short it is. Here's your second. 7:15 on the dot." The young man didn't turn his head nor raise his eyes. The old man shrugged and looked at his watch, tapping it gently. "That's your second paragraph. Again, not very long, is it?" "Sorry to bother you, but what time is it now?" Without moving a muscle, the young man responded, 8:22 on the dot. There's two more paragraphs. One of them is just that simple sentence, "Sorry to bother you, but what time is it now?" "If it doesn't arrive soon, I'm going to be late for my appointment." "Yes." The old man tried to see the boy's eyes, but the tilt of his head and the flap of hair falling down kept them from view. "Aren't you concerned?" Three more paragraphs. So you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs. And this would not even be a whole page. This is just a PowerPoint screen. And the reason for that is the two characters are speaking rapidly back and forth. And so you have a new paragraph every time the speaker changes. And one of the paragraphs is only a single word, yes, the second last paragraph. Now, normally we wouldn't even think of that as a paragraph because most students are taught in academic English that to write a paragraph you need 6 or 8 or 10 sentences. Teachers teach different structures for paragraphs. You need a topic sentence, supporting sentences, concluding sentence. Well, that's for an academic paragraph or if you're writing on a particular topic. If the teacher gave you an assignment to write a paragraph on a topic, you couldn't simply write yes and consider the assignment complete. I don't think you get a very good score. But in fiction writing or when you're writing dialogue or conversation, you can have very short, a few words or even one word paragraphs. All of the paragraphs here are indented. You can see that there's a little indentation, and I also left a space just to make it clearer for you where the paragraphs are broken up. So that's why I'm calling it conversation breakup. It's where to break up the conversation in terms of paragraphs. Also, I didn't include a lot of broken rules in this particular dialogue. but you can have one of the characters could be talking in slang if that makes sense. If it's a young character perhaps, or a character of a different education or even a different culture, you could have different accents, etc. But you need to be a little bit careful with that sometimes because the reader has to understand what the characters are saying. So I didn't include a lot of that, but you can look at some of the punctuation. You'll see that all of the punctuation marks are inside, or most of the punctuation marks are inside the quotation marks. So when it ends with a question mark and a quotation, the question mark goes inside. Also, if what's being spoken is at the end of the sentence, the period goes inside the quotation mark. You'll notice in the 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, without moving a muscle, the young man responded. Then you have a comma, and then you'll have a capital because here is where the character begins to speak. So even though it's in the middle of the sentence, you do need to put a capital on what that character is saying. I'm just looking to see if there's any other punctuation that I wanted to discuss, but I don't think so. The main idea is breaking up the paragraphs and getting most of your punctuation inside. You'll see in the second paragraph, 7:15 on the dot, comma, then the quotation mark. The young man didn't turn his head. So if you look at a few examples, look at some of your books, some of the fiction books you have at home, and you'll see that the quotation marks, the punctuation at the end is on the inside, and that you often have a comma if there's some description or introduction, let's say, to the quotation before the speaker begins to speak, and then you'll have a capital regardless of where it shows up in the sentence. So just remember, when you're writing conversation or dialogue, you're going to have many paragraphs in most cases. And just imagine that the speakers are talking. This one's talking, then this one's talking. This is when you're changing your paragraphs each time that conversation flips from one character to another. And you can have many, of course. I just gave the example with 2 characters, but you've read lots of books. The problem when we read books, we don't always pay attention to the punctuation, exactly where the paragraphs are broken apart. So sometimes we have to specifically pay attention to that. Look at the blog. The blog has different examples, and of course in written form you'll see things a little bit differently. It's explained a little differently than the video sometimes. Also, don't be afraid to ask a question, leave a comment. Click on the subscribe button, click on the notification bell, like the video if you like it, all of those fun things to help me out. And in the meantime, have fun writing and playing around with writing. And if you want me to look at some of your writing, I'm always willing to have a glance and give a little bit of feedback or a comment or two. Of course, if you'd like to take a course and learn a lot more about how to write all kinds of sentences and paragraphs and punctuation, grammar rules, things of that nature, check out the online courses that I have on my website. Some of them most of those ones you do on your own, but I also have some that you can work with me as well. So you can get in touch by email through the website or even through a comment here. It's Ron Johnson from L.T.L. Tutoring Central, as I'm sure you know. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye for now.